When rescue teams broke open a section of the cave after a desert storm, they found what no one expected. Park Chief Tomás Rivera, sitting upright against the stone, his body perfectly preserved, as if he'd only been gone a few hours. Beside him lay his notebook, the ink melted into strange spirals, and a single line still visible. The cave showed me the others. But what terrified them most wasn't the body. It was the wall behind him, covered in dozens of fresh handprints, pressed into the rock like something inside had been trying to get out. And just before the camera shut off, a second shadow appeared beside Tomás, one that didn't belong to anyone in the team. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us until the end. And if this mystery moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. The desert in late July feels alive. You can hear it breathing if you listen long enough. Wind dragging through dry grass, the faint buzz of power lines, the crackle of sand under a boot. That's what Chief Raymond Holt always said. The land speaks, son. You just gotta shut up and listen. Raymond wasn't a man who got scared easy. 20 years in the New Mexico Parks Division had made him solid, steady. The kind of man who could walk through a thunderstorm and somehow come out drier than everyone else. But that night, July 22nd, 1987, something in his voice over the radio didn't sound right. The clock on the Ranger base wall read 2:47 a.m. Ranger Torres, half asleep, heard the static pop, then Holt's voice. Copy base entering Benton Cavern. Door was open again. Then a pause. If I don't call in 10, lock it. That was it. No one ever heard from him again. By sunrise, the small Ranger outpost was already buzzing. Coffee cups clattered, boots stomped through sand, radios whispered half-thoughts and guesses. Someone said maybe he slipped. Another said maybe the old man finally lost it. Benton Cavern wasn't supposed to exist, not anymore. It had been sealed off in '79 after 2 workers vanished inside during a survey project. Their lights were found, their ropes were found, but the men, nothing. Raymond himself had signed the closure order. So why go back? At 7 a.m., a small team, Torres, Lila Vaughn, and Deputy Crowley, drove out to Holt's cabin by the ridge. The sun was pale, weak, the kind of morning that doesn't feel right from the start. When they pushed open the cabin door, they froze. The air felt thick, damp, like someone had been boiling water inside all night. On the table sat Holt's uniform hat, perfectly centered. Beside it, a folded map drawn by hand. Red ink circled one spot. Section D, not on record. Torres picked it up, frowned. Section D, we don't have a D. Crowley grunted, his eyes on the old radio still buzzing faintly. Man draws up fake sections now? Guess the chief lost his mind. But Lila noticed something else. Right near the window frame, a handprint. Not dirt, not dust. It was pressed deep, like the wood itself had softened under the touch. Later that morning, word spread fast through town. The park chief, gone. His cabin, empty. And someone said the cave lights flickered all night. Down at the diner, people whispered over pancakes and coffee. He went looking for them old boys again, you ask me. Nah, he's probably hiding from inspection. You know he covered something up back then. Come on, Chief Holt. That man was the park. Rumors turned into folklore before the day even ended. And by sunset, Benton Cavern was once again sealed, this time by the county sheriff. But something about it didn't sit right with Lila. She'd worked with Holt for 6 years. She knew the man's habits, how he triple-checked every lock, how he wrote notes for everything. He wouldn't wander into a sealed cave without reason. That night, as she sat outside the ranger post, cigarette glowing in the wind, she heard the faint hum of radio static again. The same channel Holt had used. She froze, turned the dial. Static. Then a faint crack. A whisper. Her name. Lila. The sound came once, low, stretched, like it had traveled through water. Then silence. She didn't sleep that night. By morning, she made up her mind. She gathered 2 others, Torres and Crowley, and said quietly, "We go in tomorrow. No orders, no paperwork, just us." Torres looked uneasy. Crowley just shrugged. "You're insane, you know that? But fine. If we find the chief, you owe me dinner." Lila smiled, trying to hide her nerves. But deep down, something cold settled in her chest. Because in all her years working under Holt, she'd never once seen him break a rule. If he went back into Benton Cavern, it meant something was waiting there that shouldn't have been found. As the desert wind rose that night, rattling the windows of the ranger post, the radio light blinked once more. And in that brief flicker, Torres swore he saw something move inside the dark reflection of the window. A tall silhouette wearing Holt's hat, standing behind him. When he turned around, nothing. Just the faint echo of a voice, fading into static. The desert was still when they arrived. That kind of silence that eats the sound of your boots, your breath, even your heartbeat. Lila led the way, a flashlight in one hand, Holt's marked map in the other. Torres trailed behind, chewing gum like it would keep him from shaking. Crowley carried the gear, rope, lanterns, oxygen meters, and a radio tuned to Holt's old frequency. Benton Cavern loomed ahead, its entrance half collapsed, half alive with wind. It didn't feel like a hole in the ground. It felt like a throat. A slow exhale rolled out, dry and warm. "Why do I feel like we're breaking into something that doesn't want us?" Torres muttered. Crowley laughed, but it came out weak. "You ever seen a cave that wants you?" They climbed in. The light cut through dust, thick as smoke. Rocks shimmered faintly, covered in a thin layer of moisture that shouldn't have existed in this heat. Every footstep echoed too long, as if the sound was bouncing between two invisible walls right beside them. Half an hour in, they reached the first chamber, what the old maps called Section B. Holt's mark pointed deeper, toward the one labeled D. Only problem? There was no path to D. Lila scanned the walls, running her hand across a smooth curve of stone. Her glove came away slick, mud mixed with something warm. She looked down. In the beam of her flashlight, a faint trail of footprints led forward. Crowley frowned. "Chiefs?" Torres bent close. "Could be, but look, why only one set?" They followed the prints into a narrow tunnel that pulsed faintly with air, as if breathing. Each step echoed slower, like the cave itself was delaying their sound. The radio crackled. A low hum, rising, falling, rising again. Crowley tapped it. Dead signal? Then a voice, faint and distant. "Don't come down." Torres froze. That was him." Lila's throat tightened. "Keep moving." The passage widened suddenly into a small circular chamber. A pool of black water sat in the center, perfectly still, reflecting their lights back at them. And right on the edge, half buried in mud, lay a flashlight. Old model. Government issue. The same brand Holt used. Torres picked it up. It still worked. When he clicked it on, a dim orange light flickered alive, and under the lens, smeared but visible, was a print. A handprint, too wide, too long. 5 fingers stretched into 7 faint impressions, like the mud had melted under something heavy. Lila whispered, "That's not human." Crowley swallowed hard. "Maybe he dropped it while falling." "Falling where?" she shot back. "The ground's flat." No one spoke for a while. The only sound was water dripping from somewhere above. Then Torres said quietly, "You ever heard about the Benton miners? My granddad used to tell me stories. Said the first ones who dug here swore they heard whispers in the rock. Like it remembered their voices." Lila sighed. "That's just ghost talk?" "Maybe," Torres said, "but they all went missing too." They pressed on, deeper into the belly of the earth. The air grew heavy, metallic, thick enough to taste. Their lights flickered every few minutes, and every time they did, it felt like the darkness pressed closer, like something waited just beyond the edge of the beam. About 3 hours in, Torres stopped. "Listen." A faint sound drifted through the tunnel, a heartbeat. Rhythmic, dull, vibrating through the rock. "Boom, boom, boom." Crowley whispered, That's not possible. But the sound grew louder with every step. When they reached the next chamber, the walls shimmered faintly, like veins glowing under skin. The floor trembled. Something pulsed beneath the ground, almost breathing with them. Lila turned, eyes wide. "We're not supposed to be here." Crowley pointed toward a faint red smear on the far wall. It was a handprint again, but smaller this time, like a warning left behind. And just below it, scratched into the stone with a knife, were 3 words. "It follows sound." No one moved. The radio hissed again, and this time, Holt's voice came through clear as day, hoarse, whispering, "Don't make a noise." Then the radio went dead. Torres dropped it, heart pounding. "That was him! That was—" Lila grabbed his arm, shushing him, because just then, from deep inside the tunnel behind them, came the softest echo of breathing. Slow, wet, heavy. They turned off their lights and listened. The sound crawled closer, then stopped. Torres exhaled, barely a whisper. Maybe it's wind. But Lila knew wind didn't breathe. That's when the cave let out a long, low groan, like the sound of stone bending under weight. The ceiling rained dust, and before anyone could speak, their lights flickered one last time. When they came back on, the footprints were gone. Only one new print remained, right beside Lila's boot. Fresh. Still wet. When the 3 rangers stumbled out of Benton Cavern that night, they looked like people who'd seen something that shouldn't exist. Their uniforms were torn, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. They never filed a report. Didn't even speak about it among themselves. By morning, Lila handed in her resignation. Torres vanished a week later. No call, no note. Crowley stayed 2 months before leaving the county entirely. And Benton Cavern was sealed again. 1987 faded quietly into 88. On paper, Holt was listed as presumed deceased. His wife moved away. His cabin was left untouched, like a shrine no one dared enter. But the land never forgot. Every few months, someone camping near the ridge would report strange noises at night, voices, faint music, or the sound of someone tapping from below the ground. At the La Cueva diner, old-timers would lean across their tables and whisper, "It's the chief. He's still down there." You think ghosts can use radios? In Benton, anything can. And then there were the rangers, new recruits mostly, young and full of disbelief, who joked about the chief's mouth. That's what the locals called it now. They'd dare each other to walk up near the barricade, press their ear against the cold rock and listen. Most said they heard nothing, but one claimed he heard breathing, said it matched his own, like the mountain was imitating him. By spring of 1989, even the skeptics began to notice the ground near Benton felt different. The soil sank slightly underfoot, like stepping on damp sponge. And at night, you could see faint pulses of light coming from beneath the cracks, like veins under skin. The National Geological Institute sent a small team out there, 4 scientists and 2 sound engineers. They said it was likely geothermal activity. But that theory didn't explain the recordings. Their microphones, planted deep in the cavern's outer walls, picked up rhythmic vibrations. Not seismic tremors, not wind. Patterns, structured, almost like a heartbeat. The team didn't release the raw audio to the public, but one of the interns, a kid named Davis, leaked a copy to a friend. Weeks later, that friend played it at a bar in Santa Fe. And when people heard it, they stopped talking, because under all that rumbling and static, you could hear a man's voice. Faint, distorted, repeating one phrase over and over. Turn it off. And when they ran a spectral match on the voice, it aligned, 97% match, to Chief Raymond Holt. After that, everything changed. The government quietly sent another recovery unit. They called it Operation Reclamation. 3 weeks later, reports leaked that the cavern's floor had collapsed during excavation, revealing a deeper section no one knew existed, over 300 feet below the mapped tunnels. Workers said the air that came out was cold, wet, and smelled faintly of iron. And something sweet, like decay masked with perfume. The deeper they went, the more the rock seemed alive, fibrous, smooth in places it should have been jagged. The floor flexed when stepped on, and the sound, the sound, followed them. Whispers, throbbing, the rhythm of something that wasn't echoing, it was calling back. Then, 2 days into excavation, one of the floodlights down in the pit hit something shiny, a badge. Rust-edged but still legible. Number 1078, Raymond Holt's badge. The recovery team froze. They hadn't even reached Chamber 6 yet, and now, lying just a few feet from the new drop, they found him. Body intact. Face pressed into the dirt. Hands flat like he'd been crawling. His skin hadn't rotted, just turned pale, grayish blue. His eyes, still open. When they pulled him out, something strange happened. Every piece of equipment, cameras, mics, meters, cut out for 10 full seconds. No power surge, no fault line, just silence, dead air. And then everything came back at once. One of the engineers swore she heard someone whisper, "Thank you," through the headset, right before the silence hit. But her voice recorder didn't pick it up. Back on the surface, a crowd formed around the trucks. People stared as Holt's body was carried out, zipped in black plastic. Someone whispered, 2 years in there and he still looks like he just fell asleep. But the coroner didn't think it was sleep. When they examined him, they found something in his lungs. Fine dust, organic particles that pulsed faintly under light, not fungal, not mineral. Something in between. Alive, but not living. And that's when the team sealed the cavern again. No announcements, no follow-up reports, just black tape, armed guards, and a sign that said, "Hazardous structure, no entry." For months after, locals claimed they saw trucks rolling in at midnight. No logos, no plates, always leaving before dawn. Some said they were removing rocks. Others swore they were feeding something. By winter, the land went quiet again. But at the ranger station, that same radio light, Holt's old frequency, kept blinking every few nights. No voice, no static. Just that slow, rhythmic pulse. Almost like a heartbeat. The cave was darker than any night they'd ever known. Even their flashlights seemed afraid to shine too far. When they entered the passage where Tomás had last been seen, the air shifted, heavy, damp, humming with something alive. One of the rescue team members, Officer Ruiz, whispered, "Do you hear that?" The others froze. From deep in the rock came a low, hollow groan. Not wind, not water, something rhythmic, like the breath of the cave itself. They pressed deeper. The walls were slick with condensation, and strange carvings lined the stone. Symbols no one could read, shapes that seemed to shimmer when light touched them. A few feet ahead, the beam of a flashlight caught a torn scrap of uniform fabric pinned to a rock by something that looked like a bone. It was Park Chief Tomás's patch, and just beyond it, a trail of blackened footprints burned into the stone. The deeper they went, the more the cave fought back. Batteries drained without reason. Radios screamed with static. One of the men swore he saw Tomás's silhouette vanish around a corner. When they followed, there was nothing. Just a narrow opening leading to a massive underground chamber, and in the center of it, a pool of still, mirror-like water. Ruiz stepped closer, whispering, "Chief, is that you?" The reflection rippled, but it wasn't their faces staring back. It was Tomás, pale, motionless, standing behind them in the reflection. They spun around. No one was there. Then came the smell, metallic, like rust or blood, and the sound of something dragging just beyond the reach of light. By the time they stumbled out, one flashlight short and one man missing, the team refused to speak of what they saw. The official report said the conditions were unstable. But Ruiz told his wife that night, "The cave isn't empty, it's waiting." 2 years later, the cave was sealed to the public. Locals avoided it. Rangers stopped mentioning Tomás's name. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed the story. Until the storm came. A flash flood tore through the desert, breaking open a section of rock near the cave's old entrance. Inside, rescue teams discovered a new chamber, one that hadn't been mapped before. The air that seeped from it carried a smell of decay, but faintly mixed with something sweet, like cedar smoke. When the lights flicked on, the chamber revealed itself in pieces, a wall of handprints pressed into the stone, a ranger's badge buried in the dust, and in the center, leaning against the wall like he'd sat down to rest, Park Chief Tomás Rivera, perfectly preserved. His clothes faded, his skin gray but untouched by rot. One of the investigators whispered, "He looks recent, like he just died." But the cave logs confirmed. He'd been missing for 748 days. They photographed everything. When they lifted Tomas's hand, they found something clutched beneath it, a notebook, water-stained. The ink bled into spirals. On the final page, written shakily, were the words, "The cave showed me the others. It doesn't want to be found." Then, below that, a drawing of the same symbols found on the walls. Later that week, Ruiz, now retired, was called to identify the body. He took one look and froze, because beneath Tomas's collar, a new carving had appeared on his neck, the same shape they'd seen glowing on the walls 2 years ago. When Ruiz asked if it could have been done post-mortem, the coroner just shook his head. Tomás was buried quietly, no press, no ceremony. But in the months that followed, hikers claimed they heard a man calling for help near the sealed entrance. And one photograph from the rescue team, the last one before the camera shut off, showed a shadow in the corner of the chamber, mirroring Tomas's exact pose, even though no one was there. The park closed the area for good in 1989. But to this day, locals say when you stand near that ridge at night, you can still hear a voice echo through the wind. Don't follow the light. They sealed the cave again after that, welded the entrance shut, and marked it off-limits forever. But locals say on quiet nights, you can still hear someone calling from deep inside, a voice that sounds just like Chief Rivera's. So tell me, if you heard your name echoing from a cave that's been sealed for decades, would you answer it?